When we live in a very vast materialistic world, I think what you're saying there, a lot of what is applied when we live in that world, you can see, right? So when we live in a world of materialism, you can see survival of the fittest, a very social Darwinian aspect of society and the world. But you also say about spirituality as well, about the gems, the virtues, and the manifestations of God, the messengers of God throughout time have been teaching humanity to understand that we have these gems. As Baha'u'llah says, gems of inestimable value. And I got that first time, that word. Not the easiest to say. Inestimable value. We cannot count or think about the gems that we have inside of ourselves. We have so many, right? What do you think about this passage about gems of inestimable value? And I know this is a podcast for another time. I know we are going to be talking about Viv's other book as well, Nurturing a Healthy Human Spirit Within the Young. But we won't go on that today because we're sticking on this topic. But can you very briefly talk about gems and virtues, or gems of inestimable value, and how does that incorporate within a materialistic world? And would you say these are the instruments, the tools to overcome materialistic assumptions?
Yeah, fundamentally, yes. So gems of inestimable value are what we inherently possess. And we started identifying a few of them earlier. It's to do with forgiveness, patience, resignation, contrition, all these wonderful qualities of human perseverance, courage. All these are wonderful gems. But the word inestimable is an important word.
I'm glad you got that word right as well.
I've been practicing it over many years.
I challenge everybody to try practice that word. Because like the first time you will not get it.
Okay. So something to be inestimable. Oh, I said it wrong myself.
You said it wrong yourself. Oh my
something
God.
To be inestimable.
There we go.
Means that you cannot estimate its value. So let's take just one quality of generosity, okay? It's a wonderful quality. All of these gems are wonderful qualities, but just take that one quality. You cannot estimate the worth of generosity. And it doesn't mean that you have to be rich to be generous. We can be generous with our time, with our care and consideration for other people, with patience with other people, with helping other people, and so on. This generosity, having a generous nature, it's inestimable. We cannot underestimate its value. It's invaluable. And that's part of our human nature. Now, my understanding as well, reading, from what Baha'u'llah writes, is that these qualities, we start growing these qualities here as a seed. They may not be very well developed, but it's important to develop all these gems, mixing metaphors now, as seeds, so as they can start growing in this world, having its effect here, but is absolutely necessary for our ongoing development in the next world. And that's what we take into the next world, is the condition of the soul that we made from this world in trying to bring out these gems, bring out these wonderful qualities of the higher nature to control the lower nature, but also to use them to advance civilization, to make our contribution to the betterment of society. And if we can do that, then we fulfilled our major functions for being here, is to prepare ourselves for the next life and to contribute to an ever-advancing civilization.
It's like when a baby develops his or her physical body, isn't it? In the womb of its mother, so that it can live a healthy life in this physical existence, in this physical world. And I think that analogy, that segue as well, that it's the same in this world in terms of growing our spiritual body in preparation for the next world as well, right? And a lot of that is through tests and suffering and overcoming materialistic boundaries or barriers as well, Before we wrap up, Viv, is there anything else you want to say on this subject before we finish?
Yeah, there's so many things to speak about this because, it's one of the Baha'i texts mentions about a paralysis of will, because when we think that we can't educate the aggressive tendencies of man by training and by nurturing properly. We're just stuck with it. Then this leads to, well, what improvements can we really make if we're naturally aggressive all the time, And it acts like a paralysis of will to bring forward a better world. But what I'd like to end on is, a statement of Abdu'l-Baha, because his statements are very clear, and I'm just trying to be a vehicle to enable those understandings and insights to come your way. The attributes of his divine nature, Abdu'l-Baha writes, that's a higher light nature. The attributes of his divine nature are shown forth in love, mercy, kindness, truth, and justice, one and all being expressions of his higher nature. There are many more, of course. Every good habit, every noble quality belongs to man's spiritual nature, whereas all his imperfections and sinful actions are born of his material nature.
So there's a clear demarcation that Abdu'l-Baha is making there as well, between our higher nature, our good nature, and our lower nature there.
Can I just say there, sorry to interrupt, Cal,
Go ahead.
is that we're seeing a prevalence of man's lower nature dominating the world. The animal characteristics that are coming through all the time, adversarial ways of going about things in politics, in business, competitiveness, all these are characteristics of man's lower nature, which is the animal side of ourselves. And unless we can inject into society, starting with ourselves, not expecting anybody else to do it, but focusing on ourselves to develop these spiritual gems of inestimable value. If we can do that, then we're making a significant contribution to the betterment of society. Otherwise, what are we left with? We're left with more of what we have now, which is, oh my God, the human race is suffering to such an extent now, it's more an exposition of hell than of heaven. And in the words of His Holiness Christ, he promised, when he gave the only one prayer he gave us, that God's kingdom would come on earth as it is in heaven. How is that going to happen if we don't respond to the spiritual call of the manifestations of God, and in particular Baha'u'llah in this day and age, who was promised by all past messengers of God, respond to their appeal for us to come up higher and to develop, to bring out these spiritual qualities, to overcome our low nature qualities, and then see the effect it has within our family, the way in which we bring up children, the way in which children are taught in school, the way in which they relate to each other in work, the way in which we relate locally, nationally, and internationally on all manner of platforms.
And I think that's really important as well in terms of, you just said it there, about the educational system as well. And I think that's what's really lacking in the educational system at the moment. I remember you saying that as well, that the educational system that we have in place, especially in the West, is very based upon driving young people to become economical units in a vastly materialistic society as well, right? That's why I think that injection of spirituality, of understanding who we are as human beings, is so important, especially for the education of children. But that will be a podcast for another time when we go into the nurturing book. Are there any final words, Viv, before we end this part 2 podcast about applying like a roadmap, in one sense, to materialistic assumptions?
Yeah, just to say that there are 4 other materialistic assumptions which I've looked into and looking through the spiritual lens of the teachings of Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha to challenge those materialistic assumptions.
Friends, if you want to read that for yourselves, then head over to Amazon or George Ronald. Just type into Google Viv Bartlett, Navigating Materialistic Minefields, and you can buy a copy of his book and read those chapters for yourselves. But it's been a great talk with you again, Viv. I've learned so much, as I usually do when I have great fruitful conversations with you. And once again, friends, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment on this podcast. And we will see you in part 3, which we'll be diving heavily more into this Viv's book, Navigating Materialistic Minefields. Have a great day, and we will speak to you soon. Bye-bye.